Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for practice owners and leaders, where we are obsessed with how to build a successful practice and get a life too. Hi, I'm Chuck Blakeman, and we're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time, get off the treadmill, and rehumanize dentistry by giving everybody their brain back. Today we're going to talk about avoiding the roller coaster treadmill. I fell into this illustration. I was just doing a seminar one day, and I just fell into it, answering questions. And I think it's my favorite business illustration of all time, largely because I can actually draw it. We put it in our second edition of Making Money is Killing Your Business, and it went into that edition. The idea here, again, is to make more money in less time. Let's become practice owners, making more money in less time, not income producers who make more money in more time. Let's make more money in less time, get off the treadmill, and get back to the passion that brought us into dentistry in the first place. I forgot this used to be fun. In an earlier podcast, we talked about the two opposing forces that we're faced with every day, the tyranny of the urgent and the priority of the important. The tyranny of the urgent causes us to think in terms of short-term decision-making. You should go back and listen to that podcast. It's a short one, but it's a powerful one. Short-term decision-making is probably one of the biggest diseases in dentistry and in business in general, anywhere in business. You talk to anybody who helps business owners and practice leaders build their practices, and you're going to find people who are frustrated with people making short-term decisions. The priority of the important is about long-term decision-making. Let's make a priority out of the things that may not matter today, but will help us build a practice that makes money when we are not there. And that's part of the process of the tyranny of the urgent, is it's about making money today. That's where we make money, is right now. So we make decisions based on how do I make money today, and I never figure out how do I actually build a practice that has a legacy and that makes money when I'm not there. Because of the short-term decision-making of the tyranny of the urgent, next year, the year after, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years later, we look at our practice and say, nothing has changed. I'm in the same place I was 1 year, 3 years, 5 years ago. It's like Groundhog Day. When we pay attention to the priority of the important, we make progress toward our ideal lifestyle. I wanted to set that stage because it's important for the roller coaster treadmill, because the biggest issue in our practices today is short-term decision-making versus long-term decision-making. There's a significance formula we went through in the other podcast. I won't torture it here, but it's T plus M plus E equals S. Time plus money plus energy equals the ability to build a significant life. We've got to get all three of those all at once. The question here that we're going to pose today is, are you making decisions based on where you are, which is short-term decision-making, or on where you want to be? If you're making decisions based on where you are, where do you think you'll end up next year? In the same place. Okay, this is an easy illustration to describe on a podcast. It's about what 30 years of practice looks like way too often when we manage our practice instead of leading it. Just think of a sine wave that goes up and down and up and down and up and down like an endless roller coaster. And at the bottom of the wave, it says not enough, and at the top of the wave, it says plenty or too much. You can put just about anything you want in that, and 30 years worth of practice can look just like this. I don't have enough patients. I have too many patients. I don't have enough patients. I have too many patients. I don't have enough staff. I have too many staff. I don't have enough staff. I don't have enough square footage. I have too many operatories. I don't have enough operatories. Just endlessly for 30 years. If you've been in practice for 3 or 4 or 5 years or 6 years already, you've seen these cycles, and it's not fun. We do this for 30 years, and the game here is to not take distributions for a year or two before we sell our practice, so that the practice looks really profitable, and we sell it to some fool who's going to do the same thing for another 30 years. Welcome to dentistry. Let's do it differently. This is not what it should look like for 30 years. 30 years of practice should look very differently. Instead of a sine wave that never goes up, it just goes up and down and up and down and up and down and basically flatlines after 30 years. We want to have one where the trajectory is always up. It's still going to be bumpy, but the trajectory should be up. And the difference is this. When we manage our practice, we're basically making decisions on survival mode, on the short term. We're hostages to our practice. We're just doing whatever we have to do to survive this month or this quarter. When we're leading our practice, we're thinking about the future and we're making long-term decisions. The biggest difference between short-term and long-term decision-making when it comes to the roller coaster treadmill is that the leader sees their future clearly. If you don't have a real clear understanding of what you want your practice and your life to look like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, you're making one of the biggest mistakes you can make. Most dentists look at their practice, if they look at anything, they may look at their practice and say, well, this is what I want my practice to look like 3 years or 5 years from now. But they never look, almost never, look at what they want their life to look like. And the fact is we should use our practice. I put it on the back of my first book, Making Money is Killing Your Business. Use your practice to build your ideal lifestyle. Most of us are being used by our practice. When we lead, we see our future clearly, we hire differently, we expand, we invest, learn, train, develop, reinvent. We lead, we mentor, we do all the things that leaders do to get us to a different place. And we make decisions based on where we want to be, not on where we are. When you put these two waves together, if you think of the first sine wave that just goes up and down and up and down and up and down, but basically goes straight across the page, that's the person who's making decisions based on the short term. Nothing ever changes. They take home relatively the same amount of money for year after year after year and are the same amount of hostage to their practice year after year after year. Juxtapose that against the person who is leading instead of managing, and their sine wave is going up. It's still bumpy, but they're making decisions differently and it's getting better all the time. It leads to freedom. They see their future clearly, and they have decided they're going to make their own rules about what their practice looks like. I've talked about this before. We have a big training center here in Denver, and splashed across the front of it, it says, make your own business rules, because he who makes the rules wins. What do you want your practice to look like? What do you want your life to look like 5, 10, 15, or 20 years from now? Have that clearly in your mind and decide to use your practice to build that ideal lifestyle. When you do that, you make decisions very differently from the outset. If you were looking at these two illustrations on a piece of paper, what you'd see is that at the beginning, they're both experiencing the same nonsense. The same market, the same government restrictions, the same problems with staff, the same learning curve, all the same struggles, the debt, the freedom, we're going to call them freedom guy and hostage guy. Freedom guy and hostage guy, they have the same start. The difference is one of them sees their future clearly and the other is thinking, how do I survive for the next 3 months? One is thinking tactically, the other is thinking strategically. The hostage guy, he's thinking tyranny the urgent. How do I get through the next week? The freedom guy, he's thinking about what is the important things that I need to do to make my future what it needs to be. Meanwhile, hostage guy is reacting to whatever's around him, and freedom guy is being proactive. That is a huge differential. We can show up on Monday morning and simply react for the entire week and get through the week and actually think we did something significant because we reacted to 45 things. We got a lot accomplished. No, you just fended off the beast for 45 times. We need to think about what are those things that won't come at us that are more important than the things coming at us. Planning, processes, protocols, training, relationships, marketing, building the practice, building our legacy, developing our business mindset. These are things that won't come find us, but they will solve those tyranny of the urgent problems. What I found is most business owners and practice leaders are employing what I call the random hope strategy of business. I'm going to work really hard and I hope something good happens. It's really kind of dumb, but that's what we do. We don't think we're in charge of the outcome. We're only in charge of the process. So I'm going to work really hard and I hope something good happens. No, let's make our own business rules. Let's decide what we want as an outcome. You get what you intend, not what you hope for. Stop hoping for a good outcome and intend to have a great one. Don't employ the random hope strategy of business. Be intentional. We don't believe in business plans, but we do believe in strategic planning, which is a very different thing. It's dynamic, it's rolling, it's changing all the time, but it's constantly leading us to somewhere very intentional. You get what you intend, not what you hope for. Freedom guy is thinking intentionally. Hostage guy is thinking in terms of expenses, and freedom guy is thinking in terms of investment. You hear this all the time from dentists. I can't afford to do that. And another dentist, that woman might be saying, I can't afford not to. She's thinking in terms of investment, not in terms of expense. And that person is likely to get their freedom. There are two kinds of money that leave us, expenses and investments. And you have to figure out which ones you're working with. Expenses are short-term, investments are long-term. But if you're doing this right, you're going to make investments that will come back to bless you in the future. The hostage guy, because of all this, is making money. And the freedom guy or the freedom woman is making meaning. They're asking themselves, not how do I get through the next 3 months, but how do I build a practice that gives me the life and the lifestyle and the legacy that I want. You put all those things together and you can see that one person is aiming for freedom very intentionally and the other one is trying to survive the next 3 months. We work with practice leaders and practice owners all the time on this. I have one guy that is in his late 50s, early 60s, just connected with us recently, and he wants to continue to practice, but he has no idea how to get out from under the 5 days a week, the tyranny that he's under. We think that within 12 months, we should be able to get him to where he's working 3 days a week and actually has about 2 or 3 months off, and the practice will still make money while he's not there. We've got to be intentional. When we are, we can make these things happen. Okay, let's avoid the roller coaster treadmill. Let's be intentional about our future and get where we need to go. What's the plan of action that you have as a result of this podcast? What one thing can you do, by when, and who will support you in doing that? Find someone. Tell them, here's what I've decided to do. Here's when I'm going to have it done. And get some support and encouragement and accountability from that person to do one small thing as a result of listening to this podcast today. If this podcast was helpful, please subscribe by computer or by phone, or connect with us at www.gottsummit.com, 2 T's, G-O-T-T summit.com. That stands for Get Off the Treadmill. We have those summits quarterly for dental practitioners only. Or connect with us at www.chuckblakeman.com or email us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Let's get off that treadmill. Let's get into the participation age. I look forward to seeing you in the next podcast. Thanks.